Hi everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the Kevin Moore Show. Now, if you want to stay up to date with all my latest videos, just click that subscribe button below, as it really helps to support the show. Now, if you're new to the show, I interview guests from a spiritual perspective, covering mainstream and alternative subjects and much more. Now, on today's show, I'm about to be joined by my guest, who goes by the name of M, from the YouTube channel M Seeker of Truth. Now, M, along with his team, is on a personal mission for the truth, exposing disinformation while also looking into the conspiracy world, our true human history, technology and information being hidden from the average public, and much more. M, thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me. Yeah, welcome. Yeah, I'm happy to be here.
Do you know what, Em? I am so glad to have you on. And I think what I should do firstly here is just give a bit of background on how we connected and, what this is all about. So I'm producing a docu-series on a whistleblower from Project Camelot, run by Kerry Cassidy. Her top whistleblower is a guy called Captain Mark Richards, but he's not a captain. He's supposedly framed for the murder of his good friend Richard Baldwin, and this docu-series is more of a docu-series on discernment. So it's going to look at the murder. So it's like true crime meets the secret space program, because Mark's saying that he was incarcerated for these past 38 years along with his crime partner in a separate prison in California for something that he did not do. And it was mainly there to frame him for his time that he spent working in the secret space program, which of course none of it's true. And I've spent a very long time, looking into this docu-series, looking into Mark's claims and sort of, debunking them one by one. I'm going to go into in future podcasts how that story came to me and, all the people in the background connected with it. I'm also looking at the other whistleblowers that Kerry Cassidy supports. And of course, one of them is Simon Parkes. And Simon Parkes got connected with this docuseries by being an enabler for Mark Richards in one of his videos a couple of years ago. That's linked in the description below. And recently, when I started to look up enablers of Simon Parkes as well, I came across your videos for Charlie Ward. So I just, you're going to be part of the docu-series. There may be some bits of this interview that don't make it out because they're going to be included in the docu-series. But I've got a good feeling that most of it's, we're going to be able to put out. And this will be split up into two parts. So this first part right now is going to be concentrated on, your background, your journey, and Charlie Ward. The second interview that's going to get released will be mainly focused on Simon Parkes, and that's going to get really, really interesting. So I wanted to introduce you to my audience to begin with, and your work on Charlie Ward and, who he is and some of the claims that he's made. We could be here forever and a day with, the sort of in-depth research that you've done on Charlie Ward. So, I just want to say firstly, thank you to your team and to yourself for some of the, great content that you've done on Charlie Ward as well.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, no, I appreciate it, especially coming from yourself. I've seen some of your work. I've seen that you've got a big following, and so when you contacted me and I've looked into what you do, I thought, I'd like to speak to this guy. Now you've been telling me about this project you're doing. I'm very excited to see it. So when it's done, and I'm really happy to be a part of it. So thanks for including me, and thanks for the kind words.
Yeah,
what we're doing.
Well, I sort of got a bit addicted to your work a little bit when I because I was looking into Charlie Ward and there wasn't that much out there, and we're going to get into all that backstory as well. And just concentrating on yourself, M. Obviously, some people would say, well, why is he going by M? Who is this person? How can we trust him? So just give us a bit of a backstory, how you got started as well.
Right. Well, how I got started was, I'd kind of always wanted to. I've been researching for many years, sort of alternate history, conspiracy theory, all sorts. This is the sort of thing that really fascinates me and excites me. And come 2020, I was even thinking about perhaps making a YouTube channel on these sort of subjects, which I love to talk about. And one of the when obviously the pandemic happened, one of the sort of big conspiracy theories that came out right at the beginning of it was around this guy who was claiming to be the real king of England, and actually that the whole monarchy was fake, and that he actually had the real bloodline to be king, not only king of England, king of many other territories, and he was also claiming to be the Christ Messiah, like holding the title Christ, and some other very strong claims. And I was actually kind of a bit excited about this prospect at the very start when I first heard about it. And also, I'd heard a lot of things about, some dark stuff about the monarchy and things like that, lots of conspiracy theory or even conspiracy fact around stuff like that, some sinister stuff around, the monarchy and the current royal family. So really excited to look into it. I looked into these documents and I saw some sort of red flags. And then I saw him asking for a lot of money. And then I saw him asking for money and spending it on something else. So he was promising he was going to spend it on documents to give to the court, which will push him onto the throne. And then he was saying, "Oh, the deep state attacked our server, so we spent that 2,700 on our server, and we're going to keep the pay lines open. Give me another 2,700. We'll spend it on the documents." And I was like, "Wow, okay, big red flags, guys. Be careful about donating to this guy. I'm not quite sure about it." Then I saw a small interview from his family saying he's always been a fantasist. He's always relied on money from other people. He's written books. He's been a heavy researcher. He's a very clever guy, but he takes advantage of people, taking advantage of his family. Don't give him money. He's a fantasist. He's delusional. I think he believes his own lies, etc., etc. So I managed to get in contact with his family. And they were happy to do an interview with me, and that's where it all started. That's when my channel started. I put out a video about that. I had a group that was focusing on this, a Facebook group, and they were also concerned, or they also were ex-believers, and they were trying to help people wake up and not give him any more money, because people were throwing money at this thing. So we were trying to help people, wake people up, give people the facts, but people would not listen. I mean, they were completely sort of brainwashed by this whole thing because they wanted it to be true. So they were making professional documentaries. There was a series of documentaries called the Hidden King documentaries, and they were very well done, very professionally made by a guy who produced it called David Mahoney. And it was so biased. It was meant to be a series asking some real questions, getting to the bottom of the truth, and it was very much just entertaining this guy, letting him tell this fantastical story. And it did no good for the truth, for the arena of truth. But we couldn't combat that just through comments on the internet. People just did not want to listen. So I thought, you know what, let's try, and as crudely as they will be made, let's start a YouTube channel. I know I've not got any followers. Let's see if we can make some videos and put out this information, these facts, this hard evidence into video format, and see if that gets people to listen. And it took many months, but people started listening. Some YouTubers started listening, some actually quite, with quite a big following, that they started interviewing me, and that gave me a standing and a platform for people to go, you know what, all right, we'll listen to him, even though we know he's the real king. And eventually, we come to a point 6 months later, around October, November time. Actually, it wasn't even 6 months, like 4 months later, I'd interviewed Charlie Ward. He'd had to admit through pressure that he knew all along that there was a bit of a lie in there, which exposed Charlie from the start. And this is October. No, this was September time, late September, October time. People stopped following him. Then he gave me an interview. Lots of people dropped off after that, and he'd made a lie. So what else was he lying about? Let alone the doctor thing. We'll come to that. So yeah, that's how my channel started. It was all about exposing this fake king, and then it went from there. Everyone expected me. Well, what about all these other people that are conning people? And that's where it went really. Well, let's look at the people that promoted him. Let's look at David Mahoney, Digital Warrior Productions, people that made these documentaries. Okay, let's look at Charlie Ward. He's the guy that shot into fame, and was he'd gone viral. And it wasn't just the king was his springboard, but then he was talking about the pandemic and lots of other things that people wanted to tune in for, and he was having some guests that people wanted to listen to, and but that had all come from him promoting this lie. And so that led me to looking into Charlie Ward, and that's my story from the start.
And I should just say there that the docu-series is going to be out at sometime this year. That's my hope and aim for it. There's still a lot to do post-production wise, and I go back into that pretty soon, hence why we're doing this recording now. And I didn't want to leave this interview to wait to come out once the docu-series is out. I thought this is good for us both to put this out now. So just a bit of background on yourself with your channel. So you joined YouTube in August of 2020. You've had over 605,000 views, 16,000 subscribers, and I know you've got a team around you, and we'll talk about them in just a bit. Now, you've done some, great research as a team in regards to the individuals that we're going to discuss, and we'll get into that a bit later on. Now, your interest in the subjects that you cover, I believe, stem from your interest in mental health and the effects that it has on people, especially, with the COVID pandemic. It's been a pandemic in mental health issues as well. And that's something that you have a keen interest in. And I believe that you've had, we said in the intro there, that you've had friends and maybe even family members who have been affected by mental health. So how has mental health as well, played a part in the content that you're producing now?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, sorry, you've hit on an original question you asked there, and why I do this, which I didn't mention. I told my story, but yeah, it was all about mental health, and the reason I started making these videos and trying so hard to get people to wake up was I had friends who believed in this fake king, and they were hit hard. They'd some of them, and I've met friends as well, and some of those people had told their families, there's going to be a new king. And they were laughed at, and they were like, well, seriously, I'm being serious. There's going to be an emergency broadcast soon. I'm going to have not the last laugh, but listen to me. And they soon come to realize it was all a con, and the impact that had on their mental health, especially at a time, as you've explained, which is not only what you've said, but the loneliness involved, the anxiety around what's happening, what's real, what's not, what are we being lied to about, and they want people out there to be knowing the truth and be able to report on the truth, and some people put their hopes and dreams in, especially very confident, experienced people in creating a different reality, or good at selling a lie, for their own gain, whether that be for financially or popularity, their ego, whatever it may be. But the impact it's having on people is very, very real. And as you said, I've had a lot of experience with mental health, in family, friends, and other arenas, and it's something that's very close to my heart, and that's why I do what I do, as I've said before. Just quickly, you'd also said about my name at the beginning, and why it's M, and this was because, to protect my own privacy in life, because I was getting threats and major backlash, people trying to criticize my friends, going into their profiles, saying horrible things. I don't need that. At the end of the day, I'm not selling some incredible lie. I'm not saying I'm speaking to Trump. I'm not saying any of these things. I'm giving you facts. Take them or leave them. You don't need to attack me personally. And so I decided to leave my name out of it from the beginning, which turns out was months later was a very very wise choice, especially with some of the videos I've put out, because now not only through fans have I received threats, but I've also received threats from these influencers themselves, personal threats, threats from Charlie Ward himself, veiled threats, saying that that he, thinking about coming round to my house, or encouraging people to dox me, my address, my real name, to come and find me, teach me the fear of God, send lawyers round to my house, all through just stating some facts, telling the truth, showing back clips of these people talking and say, well, this didn't happen. All of that will and so it was a wise choice.
That must take a bit of a toll on you as well.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, and I know that this type of content. Yeah, well, actually, what other type of content will you be putting out in the future, do you think?
Well, as I said at the start, I didn't get into YouTubing to be a debunker of shills, to be an exposer of con men. It's not what I necessarily enjoy doing. Now, after the whole King thing, and especially after the 30 Reasons I Don't Trust Charlie Ward video, people have put me into that box. Probably a lot of my subscribers are only here to see me expose people, and it's not what I'm here for. Although I will continue to do so, and whenever I see BS, I will call BS. However, like I said, my real interest was, alternate history, conspiracy theory. I've seen UFOs in the past. I want to talk about them, but my experiences with that. It's not as if I believe everything these people are saying doesn't happen. Like Simon Parks, for example, saying he was abducted. I believe people get abducted. Do I believe he's having sex with cat aliens 4 times a year? Different kettle of fish. Although I'm sure that maybe some stuff like that happens, but being with his background and his story and other things, so many red flags with that story. I don't believe it. At least 100%, I don't believe it. So yeah, I want to report on things, some controversial things that I've learned, that I've seen, that I've learned about, especially when it comes to ancient history and ancient architecture. There's so much out there we do not understand how it was built like that in the time frame it was built. You've only got, even the pyramids is probably the most famous example. There's still so much we don't know, or we don't know in the mainstream science and archaeology, about how exactly that was, how that feat was managed. But when you look into some of the some other stuff everywhere, all around the world, and how these things are being copied as well. The pyramids, you find them all around the world. There's actually thousands of them. There's hundreds in China. There's loads in South America, North America, everywhere. Europe, in fact, there's Australia. There's pyramids all around the world, and how that's possible, is another question. It's just one thing from that. So yeah, that lots of things, big scope of things that I'm interested in, that I want to report on in the future.
So, just sticking with the mental health angle, because obviously that's near and dear to your heart when it comes to this work, and the money as well that people invest. People have invested money into these people that we're going to talk about, into people like Simon and Charlie, when absolutely, none of their information has ever come true. And I guess some people have spent money that they, that they didn't have neither. And there's also the sort of long-term effects on people when it comes to their mental health as well.
Absolutely. I remember back probably about August time last year, so nearly a year ago, when this fake king scenario was at its most popular. I mean, well over 100,000 people, possibly the multiple hundreds of thousands of people believing this at its peak, and many of them giving money. And I remember seeing on his Facebook Lots of comments that just made me sick to the stomach about how they were giving money and whatnot, and just felt so sorry for them. But there was this one comment. The guy said that, you know, he's supporting his family because of the pandemic. He'd lost his job and he was really struggling. But he was sending this message as a kind of encouragement to others. But I know that you're real, and you know, we managed to give you our last £100 from our last month's paycheck. You know, so other people can do this, you know. And I'm thinking, he's got a family, he's lost his job, and he's thinking this king's going to come and save us all. Please, people, give him money. I gave him my last £100. That's probably taking food off of his table, his kid, you know, for his kids, his family. And I just thought that one got me. But I've seen loads of them like that. But that one I will always remember as being, this is too much. You know, people are really being hurt by this, and they don't even realize it, and they won't realize it for a little while. I mean, that person probably looks back now and be like, why did I give him that money? But it's too late then. You know, it's a year later, and he's probably been impacted by that. He probably still kicks himself today. He may never forget that.
Yes. I think as well, you know, when people see that, when they hear as well that, you know, I've got this from my intelligence source, or, I've, whatever whistleblower has told me this, but there's never no evidence, is there, that these people show? And where's people's discernment, do you think, in that, where, you know, okay, I'm fine with what you're telling me. Is it because they've got a big platform, do you think?
Yeah, I think there's definitely a cult aspect in these followings, isn't there? You know, so many people have said to me, why should I listen to you? You've only got 4,000 subscribers odd, or whether it was in the past. You know, Charlie has 13 million followers. You've only got 10,000 followers. Why would I listen to you? Who are you? You're a nobody. I like Charlie. I don't like your attitude. I'm sorry if I've got a bit of an attitude, but at the end of the day, what I'm dealing with is very serious. And sometimes it's hard to come across all sunshine and rainbows when you're trying to tell people they're being conned by con men. Very, you know, it's a difficult topic to broach. And that's why I'm sure you might touch on it a bit later. That's why I've moved into the kind of almost a comical aspect in some of my videos when I look back on what they've been doing. And I make a joke out of it because it's like, you've got to laugh, really, because, you know, and people have thanked me for that aspect of the exposure as well, because they've gone, you know what, I felt terrible, but then you made me laugh about it. And I thought, you know what, you've just got to laugh, haven't you? You know, and move on, and then try and help others. So sorry, where was I going with this?
Well, it's almost like I was saying, the bigger the lie, you know, the cult, and the bigger the lie, the more believable, you know, that it is.
The more followers they have, like I say, many people have said, you know, who are you? And, you know, eventually I've got more and more followers. It's still quite a small following, but, you know, it's grown quite a lot in a short pace of time. And, you know, I always said to them, is that I mean, it's really sad, you know, is that your barometer of truth, how popular someone is? Because it's very worrying when you come to these times where, you know, it's like the mainstream media. It's just like saying, well, I believe the BBC, they're on the TV, you know, to saying, well, I believe this big YouTuber because they've got this many followers and you haven't got hardly any. And, you know, I'll say, well, what about the evidence I've given? Well, who cares what evidence you've given? You know, Charlie has 13 million followers, which I proved. We went into the source code of his website and we proved that he doesn't, and that someone is physically inputting into the source code those figures for how many people apparently are following. He only has like 50,000 signed up to his don't quote me on that, signed up to his insiders club. He only gets like so many thousand views, you know, still quite a lot, but so many thousand views of his videos. He only gets minimal comments. I mean, like I get 10 times more comments on my videos, and that's for the videos that have not had their comments disabled. He only gets so many comments, and he only has so many followers here, there, you know, Gab, Telegram, and that, and it does not equate to 13 million in any stretch of anyone's imagination. So people should look at that and go, you know what? He hasn't got 13 million followers. 100,000, 200,000, maybe. 13 million, come on.
Yeah, I know. I had a look at the website today, and I love it where the little, you know, followers just spin up to the millions and stuff. And
you know what? It sat on when I did 30 Reasons. It sat on 10 million, and 17. You know the significance of the number 17. 10 million and 17 for 2 weeks. No joke. 2 whole weeks. We watched it. We watched it. Didn't budge. 10 million and 17. Obviously, they're having a crisis. The whoever is running the websites hadn't logged in 2 weeks and changed that counter physically. But to leave it on 10 million and 17, it was just, that's a joke. They're laughing at you in your face. It's
Absolutely. And when you look at someone like Charlie Ward and the audience that he's built up, and I think it was Cold Beer Confessions, one of the team members for GriftBusters, which we're going to talk about in just a bit, who used the words, he sees his audience as a cash cow to sell back, to his platform. And there's a lot of big platforms and media platforms, even myself, that that sells back sponsorship sometime. A lot of the bigger ones nowadays, bigger platforms, they're now selling IP, intellectual property, where they're making their own products back to their audience. But when it comes to Charlie's products, I think it's safe to say that they're not just, it's not about them being overpriced, you can get them cheaper elsewhere. It's also, they're not really of service.
absolutely. If you go onto his site or watch any of his videos, there's always something being sold or being promoted. In fact, on a lot of his videos, I don't think it's on there anymore. But every single video he used to open up with, "Now, I'm not giving you I'm not qualified to give you financial advice. However, this is where I buy my gold. And if you hurry up and get it quick, you'll get this special offer on buying the gold, and you get a nice free silver coin." I mean, literally, he's selling you metals from the very start of his video. And lots of YouTubers do this. It's kind of, one thing is kind of disingenuous, starting off with, "I'm not giving you financial advice. I'm not trying to sell you nothing. But if you hurry up and buy this and use this code, you'll get a free silver coin." And what he doesn't tell you is he'll get a free silver coin himself for each time you use his code. But there's the other things he's selling. I mean, not only his own merch and things like that, which a lot of influencers do. I kind of got no problem with that. He sells books. My problem is making lots of money off of lies for a start. And when I know that he's lying, that's a big thing for me. But then also he's gotten involved in the currency selling, the forex, foreign exchange selling, trying to promote the selling of dinar, dong, etc. And he, yes, ridiculously overpriced. And it was done quite cleverly, because it was done through third parties. It was done through other YouTubers and promoting them selling it. And then when this was all brought to light, he has this Nazara shop as well, which he doesn't actually run. But obviously the whole Nazara club, he's kind of like the head of it. There's a Nazara shop where they sold all of this Forex, overinflated prices. And only when GriftBusters started bringing this to light, he then had them put out a statement at the top: "Charlie Ward is not affiliated with this website, blah, blah, blah." And was like, "You know what? This has been exposed. Get off my back." Just like with the king, "You've been exposed. Get off my back." And whenever we point out stuff, he's just like, "Get off my back. I'll carry on." And people just keep on loving him.
Well, you can't stop these people. You can't change these people. And I think you have had an effect by what you've done. You know that. And I think that's, if you've just helped one person, that's enough. But of course, I know you wanted more than that, obviously.
It's what I've always said. And it's what I always say in my comments. And I made a video a little while back called "The Impact I've Had," Grifters and the Impact I've Had, or something like that. And I showed a lot of the comments, which have kept me going. And I've always said, if I just help a handful of people, then my time is well worth spending, because I've not been selling anything or making any money. It's just kind of like a hobby for me. And I'd always said, if I helped a few people, then it was worth doing. I was getting a lot of flack for it from brainwashed fans and whatnot, but then I was also getting comments saying, "Thank you so much. You've really helped me. You've helped my family. I've repaired my relationship with my mother," or whatever it may be. I had one comment that said, "You've saved my marriage." No joke. I was heavily into this Charlie Ward thing. Me and my husband fallen out. I'd invested a lot of money in I can't remember. I think I spent a lot of money on dinar or whatever it was. I'll have to get the comment up again. But she had said, you know what, it was a really strained relationship. After seeing your video, my attitude changed. I kind of wised up to them and watched them more closely, realized that they weren't necessarily telling the truth. I repaired the relationship with my husband, and now we're stronger than ever. And literally, one of the first sentences was, "You saved my marriage." And I thought, wow. But I thought, is this real? And because you just like, you don't kind of believe that it's something in you, kind of modest, thinking, well, surely I didn't save your marriage or whatever. I mean, she saved her marriage, is what I said to her. Obviously she saved it, but for someone to say that, obviously I must have had an impact. So that really did make me feel good and give me, validation for what I do, and give me a lot of motivation and confidence and energy to continue doing what I do. And I've had many messages since, and long may they continue. As long as they continue, I will continue trying to help people. As long as I've got a purpose, I'm happy to fulfill that and help people if I can. I'm not the Messiah. I'm just M Seeker of Truth, as Charlie
Yeah,
would
what,
say.
yeah, Charlie's
But
saying, I'm not the
I'm trying
Messiah, I'm
my
just
hardest.
Charlie. Yeah, yeah. Isn't that the title of his book as well?
I'm just Charlie.
I'm just Charlie, that's it. Yeah, yeah.
He
Okay.
missed out the Messiah part. He thought that might be too pretentious, I guess. But he
Yeah.
doesn't mind saying it in every single video of his.
No, no. And it's incredible how much these people have come into power, and we're going to get into all this as well. There has been obviously a lot of deplatforming on YouTube, but these people that we're going to talk a bit more in depth about have managed to save that really by going on other platforms and actually releasing their content on like Telegram and BitChute and other platforms where the rules are a bit different. But obviously they still stick on the YouTube because YouTube is the world's second largest search engine, and it's where you're going to get the new views from.
Absolutely. My first experience with this was Charlie Ward. Obviously, when I interviewed him in October, he'd already been for about a month saying on the beginning of all these videos, YouTube are going to shut me down soon, but we're starting our own website and we're starting a pay club where you give us €11 a month and you can be part of our insiders club. And he promoted that at the beginning of every video for about 2 months. Even in my video, he said to me, I debunked this theory that people have put out, that he was a part of the Clinton Foundation. And there was a lot about that. And I went into it and researched it. And I had to give him credit where due. It's not the truth. Stop bashing this guy. I've done the research. It was a post that someone had tagged him in, and tagged him in the Clinton Foundation, blah, 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 whatever all this evidence. You can see it on my page, or 30 Reasons, I think. Oh, no, my interview with Charlie Ward. But because I'd done that, I'd reached out to him and just said, look, I've done this. Perhaps we can have a chat. And he said, I would love to. Perhaps you can tell all of your followers about my new insiders club, and you can do this and you can do that. And I said, well, you know what, Charlie, why don't you come on my show? You can talk about that, and I've got a few questions for you. And that's how I hooked up with Charlie. He was like, yeah, you know what, I'd love to. And he doesn't usually do this personally. He has a booker who books all his interviews, but he actually got out to me personally when he just happened to look on his Twitter account. It was like, you know what, Em, thank you for clearing up that rumor, and promote my pay club for me. And I said, you know what, you could do it yourself in our interview. And he he came on, and he was kind of a bit like a rabbit in headlights with some of my questions. However, being as experienced as he was, he took it all very, and he was very pleasant to me, and quite, and he answered all of my questions. And but it looked to me like he was ducking and diving stray bullets and trying to get his way to the end of it. And many people said that the interview that I did with him, they were quite annoyed. Why did you not go hard on him? Why did you not? I gave him respect. He gave me the respect to come on. I asked him some difficult questions. I did it in a very polite manner. I accepted him graciously, and then I went back a few months later and made a 30 Reasons video where I showed you all the stuff you missed when you thought, well, Em's being too polite, but you didn't look at what I was asking and the answers he was given, and you didn't think about them. So I then presented them in a way where you had to see them for what they were and think about them.
And those two videos, I will put the links in the description below. Actually, I will link every video in the description below that we mentioned during this interview. So I think one thing the Mark Richards documentary did for me was it definitely made me remember or re-remember that word discernment. And I've been trying to apply that in more of my more recent interviews. So why do I do what I do? I'm doing the Mark Richards docu-series, which is, based on facts and discernment. And yet, I do a lot of spiritual content. And some people will say, a lot of woo content. But for me, I'm spiritual in the sense that I believe that we're a soul having a human experience, and I believe that we come from somewhere, we go back to the same space, and what information could we bring from that space that would help us in the present moment now that maybe we've forgotten or we've heard before but we never listened in the first place? Something or information that is empowering and gives back your power, a bit like a life coach, but is empowering. And not everyone I agree with that comes on, but I try to do my best. Yet I'm the guy that brought out the channeling docu-series, which is ongoing. But that's my journey, and it doesn't have to be anyone else's. But I do think sometimes that there's a lot of good information that comes through. But it's a fine line. It is a fine line. But I would not want to ignore that spiritual side. Do you know that? I wouldn't want to not include that. I think if I was to say, well, it's just all woo, then it would almost feel like, well, I'm cutting something off. I'm purposefully not willing or wanting to look at the other option. But again, it's all got to be in balance. But it is something that I think about a lot.
Yeah, absolutely. I like what you're saying there. It is all about encouraging people to think for themselves, or even to think, because a lot of these people who are watching this sort of content of the people that we're talking about and whatnot, they will believe the thinking for themselves, and they very much are. It's almost like kind of they're on one stage of an awakening, and it's kind of like you want to make sure that they're not looking at their new stage of awakening through blinkers, because actually there's a lot more to consider. Actually, are these people giving you so many juicy half-truths that you're ignoring the lies that they've embellished it with? And that's the situation I think that the truth movement is in now. It's probably always been in, but now more than ever, many people have sprung up, especially because of the financial the potential financial opportunity through being involved in such matters. Many people have stepped up to try and make a name for themselves, and in doing so, a lot of them probably have no intel whatsoever. They may watch a lot of other people cherry pick what they want to, put it all into a story, make up their own stuff too, put it all together. And I think that's actually probably the bulk of the truth community today is made up of such people. And the waters are so murky and muddy now. It's almost like, if there is there are people out there that don't want the truths, certain truths, to come out. And there is definitely some psyops going on where there's a lot of mud poured into these waters, so we can't see clearly anymore. We know that we found out that there's certain things here and there which we were lied to, but then it's very clever because it's been flooded with so much disinformation that it's hard even for some of the most who think they're most awakened of souls to see through those waters. And I'd like to think that I'm trying to clear even small pockets of those waters. Even if I can clear a small pocket of the water so we can see a bit clearly through that little gap, I can't do it all. Even a crew of us couldn't do it all. Really, what needs to happen is everyone needs to gain that sense of uh, that sense of, let's critically analyze. Let's sensically think about this. Let's use our discernment. Again, this word that you used. So the best we can do as influencers ourselves and with followers to our platforms is encourage independent thinking, and not only just independent thinking, but actually critical thinking, even if it's of me or of you. To
When I watch your videos
Yeah,
back, I know your heart's in the right place. And I wish that more media creators in this field would come from that space as well. I mean, if all your marbles are there and you're purposely putting out disinformation, then I think with a large platform, when you know better, you should try to do better. And none of us are perfect. But I think also mental health, which we've discussed earlier, plays a massive part in this, in the sense of, it could be the hosts that's suffering from mental health issues, covert mental health issues, where all on the front it looks fantastic, but inside, there's something very different going on. I think as well with myself having put a lot of different people with abilities on. Yes, of course, I would have had people on that, looking back, yeah, they could have been suffering from mental health, which would also corrupt the information or distort the information, is probably the right word, that they bring through as well. And I think you need to be able to use your intuition. I think as well, charging for a service, I get a lot of feedback from people sometimes on that, and I think, you know what, we're all adult. If you want to have a reading with someone or service, we live in the monetary system. There should be a fair exchange. But I think as well, when some information comes through that's so far-fetched and so out of shared reality, then one has to question that as well, and address that.
yeah, I have to, I have to agree with you, and I have to make it very clear that people charging money for a service, it does not make them a grifter. I mean, I don't do it myself because I don't have a service to give necessarily. Well, I do a service, but it's like I I don't see the point in what I could offer. There's no point in me making a pay service and only reaching a few people. But if I was actually a great healer in some way, and I believed in my ability, then maybe I would do a course, because I know that YouTube creators, or any creators or any influencers that spend a lot of time, it takes a lot of time and a lot of effort. So do not get me wrong. I'm not saying that anyone that charges money for their time or this, that, and the other is bad people. But what we can do is say, when we can see that these people are not telling the truth, or even if, like you say, information can't be verified, where it seems extremely fishy, and then just tell people that, give them fair warning, and then it's up to them to make the fair decision. You say about where is that line? I'd say that there's a line where you can make the difference between perhaps promoting them or leaving them alone, to maybe having a social responsibility, to actually saying, guys, stop giving this guy money. He's not really a king. I've got all this information. I can prove he's not a king. I've got his family talking to me. I've got his friends, high school friends. Can prove he's in a cult. All this stuff. Then it comes for me a social responsibility and a personal, spiritual responsibility for me to do everything that I can to put the information that I found out there to help people to stop giving these people money. Give them to someone that can actually do something for you, give you a service, because this guy is conning you out of
Right.
money.
No, totally agreed. Absolutely. And it's funny, the circle that you've sort of gone into a little bit, because, there's some big names out there, like, Corey Good and some others that, a lot of people have, well, you could say debunked, or have well, Corey right now is suing. He's being countersued as well, and there's this whole other side of this truth awakening community, which you've touched on as well, which never really gets too much mention. And it's funny to see how much this side has raised in power and influence, really, compared to the others recently.
I was obsessed with actually watching Corey Good on the Gaia channel for a while there, and you know, compelling stuff. If nothing else, very entertaining and thought provoking. You know, and to an extent that could have further opened my mind looking at these things, like these things could be true, and even some of the stuff that he talked about could be true. It could be you know, again, muddy waters of misinformation. What I have come to the conclusion of is that, you know, that he wasn't being completely honest, as well as lots of other people around him, and I don't believe he was. His story is as he says it was. Yeah, so I think you're maybe referring to the interview I did with Jordan Sather. I was very pleased to do one with him, and hoping to, well, he's saying that we're going to hook up soon, talk about UFOs and some other things, because he said, well, let's get on and talk about grifters again. I said, oh, I don't want to talk about grifters anymore. Can we talk about UFOs? He was like, I'd love to, mate. So
Well, just going to Jordan Sather, I don't know the guy, and but I know obviously he was involved with the Corey Good team back in the day, and I'd be doing the wrong thing by saying that I wasn't aware that there were uh, alleged rumors that, you know, he may have been involved in, yeah, the doxing of people. But again, it's just what I heard. I know obviously Jordan's involved in the Q movement, and again, not that I know anything about the Q movement much. I've just stayed away from it. But I wonder, you know, what is your take on the Q movement?
I mean, he is, but you know what sets him aside for me is he's more of a critical thinker around the whole subject. Obviously, he's very much involved, sort of with the kind of the Q um, sort of the society around that, I suppose. But you know, he has links to lots of prominent people, you know, that were even involved. He has been been named in a certain amount of Q drops, whatnot, you know, and he was a person that introduced me to the whole Q thing in the first place when I watched him on Above Majestic movie, which was a Corey Good, David Wilcox movie. However, you know, for me, I'm not on that train. You know, again, I will just say use a lot of discernment in that. Doesn't mean I don't keep my fingers on the pulse to what's happening in that community. That what sets him aside from the others is that, for me, from what I've seen, and you know, I am always open to being sent information. What you said to me, I'd not heard about doxing or whatnot. I do not. Would never agree with anyone that's doing that sort of work. That's alleged stuff, but no, you know, that's not something, you know. No one should be put in those situations. That's not cool. But yeah, as far as I can see from Jordan, yeah, before he had met me, he was already calling out people that were potentially muddying the waters, potentially going to discredit the Q movement, and because that is, he's still on that train. You know, and what I appreciated was that he stuck by his beliefs. He only reported on facts or things that were based on facts that had some sort of truth to it, and anything that was coming out of this whole basket, this whole secondary mainstream media of grifters that were all backing each other and saying all these things, but there was no proof behind them. He didn't jump. He could have easily jumped on that train. They would have welcomed him with open arms. He's got a history. He's got much credibility, but he didn't do that. And that, for me, gave me so much respect. And then when he actually, you know, this was after the first GriftBusters episode. I don't know if that influenced him, but he did watch those before he had these, you know. So I don't know. I can't say that influenced him, but you know, when I contacted him after he first basically went in and just asked some real questions, which got a lot of backs up in this popular community of con men, I would say. I contacted him and he was happy to receive my messages, which, he's quite a busy man. And, he said he'd watched my 30 Reasons and he'd watched GriftBusters. He loved GriftBusters and he wanted to come on to GriftBusters, which he still said when I last spoke to him. He said, yeah, let's do a GriftBusters. I said, can we do something else? Because I want to, it'd be cool because you've been talking about UFO disclosure recently. Can we do a bit about that? And you can come on GriftBusters as well. But
Yeah, well, like I said, I don't know much about Jordan. I know, obviously, he was involved in the Corrie group back in the day. He's done videos, which I've got to see some bits of these videos where he talks about his experience with Corrie and other members of that team. And I know people in this field that that have made some of those allegations that I said, with the docs and stuff. But I would like to interview him one day. I think he would make a very interesting interview. I'd love to, look into how he got into where he is now, and because I know obviously he's been deplatformed. He's been, I mean, he's been on a journey for sure. But I think you touch on some of this stuff in your interview with him, so we'll link that in the description below as well. So I want to now move to your show, which is GriftBusters, which is yourself and your team that do this show. I mean, it's a great show, and I know that it took a while to get it into production. And yeah, you can tell, you guys just, it's really fun to watch. And your team members include Justice, the Veritas Machine, Cold Beer Confessions, and they've all got their own individual platforms. There was another team member that I saw, Darren, and he was connected to the Glenn Ward interview, Charlie Ward's son, which we're going to get into.
So Darren's not directly involved in GriftBusters, but Darren's a friend of mine, someone that's been on in my groups, channels, and someone that's also obviously good friends. Well, has become friends with Charlie Ward's son Glenn, and hooked me up with that interview. Let's say after doing his own interview. But yeah, no, he's not in the GriftBusters, no. But he's a fan and
right. I got you. Yeah. Because some people may see some of the videos we're talking about, and Darren will be part of those videos as well. But GriftBusters, I think you guys together. What I like about your energy as well, and the rest of your team as well, is you're very respectful, you're very gentle. Because some people in this field of looking at others, it can get very, very nasty. And you guys from day one, never went in that direction. It's nice to see, intelligent people doing it from that respectful place as well, because I think that's important.
We tried to give as much respect as we can. Some people would say the opposite to what you've just said, that we're actually quite disrespectful. And I think at times we maybe teeter on the edge of both, but we are really respectful in terms of, the reason we're doing it is for a good thing. It's to help people. If we're wrong, we're wrong. And, if I'm ever wrong, I will hold my hands up. But I will report on what I know, what we find. And the others will report. And we're all different as well. So you can't box us all in the same thing because we've all got different beliefs. But we come together on the same belief that people are out there taking advantage of vulnerable people. And we've come together as a collective to expose what we can in that arena. Now, we share fan art and we share videos, skit videos made. People might find them, disrespectful, but actually they are just finding humor in some of what I believe are lies, or even misinformation. Finding humor in that and trying to get you to laugh along with us, because many people, including us four, would have believed in some of these things at some point, and many of our viewers would have believed in these things, or or maybe thought about some of these things and wondered whether they were true, and then to see them in the light that we shine on them, you have to laugh. And I think that is something that no one else has done. That's something that's quite unique to GriftBusters. And, I think that's part of why there is a bit of a fan base around that show. And it's just different. And I think that's a reason actually why some influencers like Jordan Sather, in fact, and others actually took notice. It was like, well, what the hell is this show? This is something. This is you don't see this usually. These guys are going in, especially with people we know are liars. We know they are liars. We can prove they are liars, and so you know what? They will get the most stick until they stop lying, until they stop hurting people, until they stop taking money off people. We will show everything. We'll do skits on them. We will laugh about them. We will make them into the absolute joke that we believe they are whilst they're hurting people. If they back down from that, we've got no reason to talk about them. They're no longer grifters, are they? So they can't be on GriftBusters. We'll
No.
move on to whoever else is hurting people. And it's simple as that.
Yeah. Now I know the shows come out when you've actually got something to talk about, so it's and we'll list the shows below as well. Actually, didn't you get the theme tune license as well? You actually put time into putting the whole show together. Actually,
yeah. So how it started was the 30 Reasons. I did the 30 Reasons. That was Charlie Ward. Me and Justice had been, both UK guys, had been debunking the fake King and Charlie Ward and all of that nonsense for a long time. We'd done shows together, me and Justice, so we already knew each other. So he was someone that I was very comfortable being in. We'd done interviews with others as well, like Huna Flash, who claimed he was a guru that could teleport, all of this stuff. And we did collaborations and an interview on that when we interviewed them, and then they exposed them in the interview. Great interview, go see that. But anyway, so us two knew each other. The other two Americans, they had both reviewed 30 Reasons, and I loved their review of it. I loved it, and they Will from the Cold Beer Confessional. He, he's a retired veteran, disabled vet, and he, Trump supporter, and he spent his time. He just waffles on for hours on live streams, and looks at these people making claims and gives an honest review and gives with his military aspects and whatnot. And he looks into these things and he goes, you know what, that's BS though. And so I thought his show was great. And the Veritas Machine, he had this kind of wider spectrum. He looked into like things like William Tompkins, Corey Good, things like that, that we'd looked into before. So he did this whole kind of psyop party thing. And I thought, well, I like the fact that, you're into that stuff, and he's funny as well. So, you know what, I got hold of Tony from the Veritas Machine. I got hold of Will. And I said, there's another American that did a great review, hooked them two up. And I said, look, guys, my vision is us four get on a panel. Might be a bit messy. I think I said GriftBusters, and Tony was like, GriftBusters, that sounds better. And we put that together. And then we've got Paul Jackman, who makes a lot of the memes, the fan art, which is great. And I just said to him, could you make like a GriftBusters logo? He was like, what, like Ghostbusters? Bang, he put Charlie Ward in there with in a no entry sign like Ghostbusters. And I was like, right, okay, so now we need a theme. And I made a kind of intro with all the four of us with my sort of crude editing skills, and I thought that looks great, but we need Ghostbusters, and they will totally get us for using the Ghostbusters theme. And I found this epic Ghostbusters theme. If you look at certainly on GriftBusters 1 episode in the description, you will find out where all these epic theme tunes they make these great themes and make them really epic sounding. You'll find the link for it there. But yeah, I got that, and I was like, you know what, they're going to get me as well, aren't they? YouTube is a minefield for copyright, and so I went out of my way to get hold of them, and I was like, literally, we're not rich people, we're not going to get that many views, this, that, and the other, but we will promote your work. And eventually they gave us a go ahead, and yeah, so all of that together just made this show just an epic start. By the end of it, you're like, all right, let's go. It's original. And that's what I think a lot of people love about it.
You guys have done a great job, and I think as a team, they would be your researchers behind the back that we sort of mentioned at the beginning of this show as well. So you've got a really strong team there as well, and well worth the watch. Again, that's in the description below. So I know we've got. I think we're going to go over time here a little bit, if that's okay, right?
You've got all my time.
Okay, appreciate that, Amber. Appreciate that. One thing I want to
cut it down if it gets
yeah. Oh no, this is all great. One thing I want to touch on as well, very quickly before we move on to Charlie, is your sort of well, if you've got one or not, but I think you do. Your sort of spiritual take on your work as well, and are you into that side of things, like looking at the deeper meaning as well? And one thing I want to add in there, which is not really related, but I keep wanting to mention this to you as well. I had a fascinating guest on the other night that deals is a doctor that's been looking into DMT for the past 25 years. And it was one of the most profound interviews I did recently, in the sense that, tapping into these other realities yourself without needing anyone else with experience in DMT. So anyway, it's not related, but yeah. What is your take on your spirituality?
We'll start with the easier question, which was maybe the DMT side of things. I've never done it myself, but I've read a lot of, or I've heard a lot of from people that I know about their experiences with it, and I've read a lot about how amazing that was, and like it was unlocking many things for them, and it was like an experience that can't be missed. I'm not sure whether I ever will, but it sounds extremely intriguing. What I have done in my past, I won't, I've no problem admitting, I have had quite a few experiences in trying mushrooms, and I don't know if that's meant to have some sort of relatable effect, where you have a connection to everything around you, and you feel everything's at one. And I can verify that. And I'm not going to necessarily say everyone go out and start eating mushrooms, but it was something that I do not regret doing, and definitely changed my outlook on life. And I think that's the same for many people that have experienced what I experienced. Now, just pre-warning to anyone listening to me and thinking, "Oh, what a great idea! Let's go and do them." I have had bad experience with them too, but many of the experiences I had were, especially a couple of them, were actually life changing. But yeah, DMT I've had as a whole different, like yeah, I've heard some stories that makes me kind of want to experience that myself. I don't know if
Yeah.
I would be
It's very
too
short-lived.
scared to.
Yeah, it's very short-lived, the experiences. But this doctor guy, Dr. Andrew Gillimore, wow, the idea of exiting this reality, going beyond the known and into this space. And he said it. The space is familiar. He's done it over 100 times, and not so much now because he's living over in Japan and they're quite conservative. But yeah, yeah, this idea of like you said, we're all one, and that we are more than this. This is not real, but it is. Experience is real, and we've got to go through it and make the best of it, right? And we can do, but there is something else, definitely something else beyond this.
It sounds immense, and I'm very intrigued, and I have read some actually reports written up on it, and yeah, it is interesting. But yeah, that's why I said about my experiences. By the way, which when I was very young with the mushrooms, because there's one thing that I took from that was how I could feel energy flowing through my body and flowing into the trees around me. Like, and how everything was connected, and how we were kind of like, all of us, like me and you, like we're all connected and it's all one. And it's kind of sounds, like I'm tripping now telling you about it, but that's it. Literally changed my outlook on life, which was the most important thing. And I think that it may have changed me to a point that the empathy, I think um, it really affected my empathy levels and my outlook on life in that respect, that I actually cared about everyone else, because they were also all me, and they were all my family, and they were all people that I should care about. And yeah, I think it really did do me some, I'm careful about saying this, that I'm promoting it like it's going to change your life to make you, but I think for me it did do me something good inside. And you were asking about my spirituality. I'm not a particularly um it's, that's not the way to say it. I won't say I'm not a particularly spiritual person. Now, I'm very fascinated in the origins of religion, and I look into things going back to the whole story of Sumeria and the Anunnaki, and how all of these religions, they all have similar or the same stories. It's all intertwined, and I believe that mainstream religions today are all misinterpretations, miscalculations, misrepresentations of an original kind of story. So that is my belief. I'm very respectful and interested in all religions, mainstream religions do, in Christianity and things like that. I'm part of, I join Charlie Freak's chats quite often, who's someone that I've affiliated with, and they are very much goodly godly, as they put it. And I love all of their fans, and I'll get in there, and they love me back, and they know that I'm not on the same page as them, but they don't hate me for it. And that's part of religion that I love, is that in a lot of cases even if they pray for your soul, they will be so accommodating and so loving towards you, and the love that's involved. And I don't mind what people believe. So for me, I don't believe in mainstream religion. For me, I believe all religion has come from one root. I believe all those stories have similarities, and it's not a coincidence that it's all come from one place. And I believe that those that are from heavens came were perhaps visitors in the past. From a spiritual soul level, I believe that we're all connected. I believe so. This is why I refer to the experiences I've had. I believe we're all connected as an energy, like a Gaia energy, and I think that I believe in Christian morals and values. I believe we should all care for each other. I believe that if we do good in the world, so karma, I don't necessarily say that I believe if you do a bad thing, then bad things are going to happen to you. But I believe if you're a bad person, then you're probably going to magnetize some bad energies. And I believe if like, so what I'm doing, if I'm going to put out these good energies, like I almost feel like there's a protection for me, because I think that so many people are willing a good connection, good protection for me. So many people are valuing what I'm doing, that I kind of have this good aura and energy around me, and I kind of feel comforted by that and feel confidence and courage from it. So that's the best I can explain it to you.
No, I get it, and you do get a lot of support from the audience as well, which is also nice. We've talked about the other side, but there is a lot of support and love for you there. I see that in the comments as well, and
I've really, funnily as it may be, and people ask me, how do you not? I seem to not get much negative feedback, and I don't want to invite it, so I'm trying not to jinx it, which I've not said it too much. I do, and I used to get a lot more, but it would seem I'm helping a lot more people than I'm pissing off.
Okay, let's get to Charlie Ward then. So the story starts out, he's walking, he's taking a walk, he's trying to lose some weight, and he's sort of semi-vlogging on his phone, creating a few videos, and he's, releasing this insider information that he knows there's a coming financial collapse coming. He's been warned that there's that there's something like a COVID situation. Well, the COVID was already happening at the time, and this was the push for the financial collapse. This is all based on him being on private jets, moving money around for the elite and wealthy, and hearing insider information. You take it from there.
Well, yeah, that's how Charlie started out his YouTube channel. However, looking back, it's quite. I mean, after the walks, when he first started doing interviews, or say interviews, or just actually talks to his computer rather than just his phone as he's walking along, he seemed to be sponsored by this Nero vodka, quite a big vodka distributor. So instantly raising questions, but what really, he started gaining followers. He got a pretty decent, following for, the average YouTuber, 2,000 or 3,000 followers before he then reported on a fake king. I always say the fake king. So if you put it into the perspective of, you didn't know it was fake, or he probably did himself. It's kind of almost tiring talking about it now, but to give context, obviously I did so much work. I literally, between August when I started and near enough December, he was pretty much everything that I did. So August, September, October, November, December, and bear in mind I was working on it from a couple of months before that. So over half a year, I literally spent all my time making sure people knew that he was lying to you. And by the end of those 6 months, people said, you're not going to help everyone. He's going to keep on going. You're not going to have an effect on him. He stopped. And it wasn't just me; it was other people too. Justice, especially, worth mention here. But other people too. So yeah, Charlie Ward was good friends with Jack Kidd. I don't want to get too much into it. You can go and see 30 reasons why I don't trust Charlie Ward. But he was good friends with Jack Kidd and David Mahoney, two notable people. Jack Kidd was the person that introduced this fake king to Charlie Ward. He said, "This guy, he claims he's the King of England. You need to check him out." Now, Jack Kidd is actually quite a famous guy, and his sister was famous. Jodie Kidd was a model, and I'm sure you know about her, Kevin. And he was also related to the royal family. He was also a friend of the Rothschilds. He was also, his other sister, Gemma Kidd, had a business, a beauty, a makeup business, which the director was Ghislaine Maxwell. These guys were really, really connected, and Charlie Ward knew all about that, was in with that. They were friends. Jack got this, which is really fishy, being related to the rules and all this stuff, got this fake king on to Charlie Ward's show, and the three of them interviewed him. And, Charlie Ward said, "The real King of England," in that. And, God bless King John III, which was Greg Hallett's moniker, king name, whatever. Because as a king, you choose a different name, don't you? You choose a kingly name. You don't necessarily go by your actual name, which is usually the case. And for Greg, it was King John III.
And I'll just add this as well, that he's basing this, and I should say, on no evidence that Anne Boleyn escaped execution. He's a descendant, and he's got a letter from Queen Victoria with a cutout of a white rabbit. And there's just nothing, though, to back up anything he says.
Cutouts of this white rabbit on this Victoria letter, and they were trying to relate that to follow the white rabbit, and to Q. There's a Q drop saying about following the white rabbit, even though it was a cutout, so it wasn't a white rabbit, it was a air rabbit, whatever you want to say. So this letter to Queen Victoria was not addressed to him, of course. It was addressed to a guy. So I want to try and keep this short and sweet, because we could open up another hour or two conversation here, but it was addressed to a guy called Francisco Manuel. And so the Anne Boleyn story you told, so this was another major red flag. He had two stories. One story was that he's a direct descendant of Anne Boleyn. Now, Anne Boleyn apparently wasn't beheaded. It was faked. And she then had a child who then had a child who was Sir Walter Raleigh, right? Now, first of all, this doesn't make sense, because even if she was an actual queen, she couldn't carry on that bloodline, because it had to be, yeah. So, that whole, the rules of the monarchy does not make sense there. But anyway, she says that he had a son who was Walter Raleigh, and he made up his ancestry. He's made up this whole story that goes down to him, even including some famous people, like famous pirates and all sorts, right? So it turns out that I went through his ancestry with his family tree and everything, and proved that it was all a lie. So that story didn't make sense. But the story that was, so this is the story, that was a story that eventually Charlie Ward had to admit wasn't true. They'd made that story up because it was originally the king was meant to be a guy called Francisco Manuel. Now, he had written books with Francisco Manuel, talking about how Francisco Manuel had a claim to the throne. That is because his father was the son of Queen Victoria, and was the legitimate heir, which was Marcus Manuel, right? According to the story. And he was exiled to Spain and became the king of Spain and this, that, and the other. But apparently they had the actual claim to the throne after Victoria. Greg Hallett went ahead and made books about his story, about how Francisco Manuel was meant to be king, but they fell out. They made these books. Greg Hallett had put his name peppered all over it and changed the story and put his own fantastical spin on it and ruined the book, and then not stole money. The investor who I'm talking to, Yawn, he took money off of him to make these books. It took too long to make these books. He then basically tried to cut the other two out. They fell out. Greg Hallett came to England and then was like, well, I've fallen out with my meal ticket. I'll tell you what, let's take the story. We can prove the Queen's not the legitimate heir. Let's make a story about Anne Boleyn and pretend that I'm meant to be king. And he then made a story about how this Rosicrucian order, this society, had chosen him to be king. But obviously he'd made these books, so he had to kind of get rid of the books because they proved otherwise. You couldn't get them anywhere, and that's something that I questioned. However, I had got involved and in touch with the financiers of the books that Greg ripped off, and there's also just about in contact with Francisco Manuel, and I'm hoping to get an interview not only with him, which has been discussed for like nearly half a year now, but also with Francisco Manuel eventually, which will be totally the nail in the coffin. But just to top it all off, he sent me his last copy of the Hidden King books, which you can't buy anywhere. And this was a 5-book copy. One of them's out there because I was reading it. And he also sent me information about how the court case that he took against Greg for taking his money, not paying him back, and whatnot. So I've got all of that information. But these books are really interesting. What they did have in them is the proof that Yawn knows him and Francisco Manuel. So basically this was the nail in the coffin, right? And it's something that I've still yet to execute because people have been waiting for this. I think a lot of people lost interest because I'd so thoroughly debunked it. By the time I got the actual die-hard proof, people were like, well, we're not interested anymore. What about Charlie Ward? So
I think the story is important because this is how Charlie Ward gained a lot of his initial traffic through this story. Did Charlie say something along the lines that he knew that this story was not true and that it was purposeful disinformation in the end? But tell me if I'm wrong.
You're slightly wrong. I think Charlie said that he knew that he wasn't the real bloodline. He knew there was a falling out. He knew this from the beginning. However, this is what he said. He said he was waiting for Greg to tell the truth. In his interviews that he did with him, he was waiting to see whether he did or not. He didn't tell the truth, and he thought he'd wait a bit longer. He'd let David Mahoney, his good friend, do these documentaries. He'd let it all carry on, knowing that there was an element of deceit in there. And the funny thing is, he only came forward and said about this when my work and others' work started to be acknowledged, and people started commenting on his YouTube and sending him messages and saying, well, what about this? And what about his family that have talked to M Seeker of Truth? And eventually he was like, you know what, this is bad business for me. I'm on to other things now. I'm on to pandemic. I'm on to this and that and the other. Screw the fake king. You know what? I'm going to come. And he had a tough decision because David Mahoney was his good friend who had spent thousands on making these documentaries. So he did not want to admit that this was, a partial deceit. But eventually he had to watch his own back and watch his own business and watch his own YouTube channel and say, David, I'm sorry, but I'm going to come clean. And it wasn't because he had a change of heart for the goodness of everyone else. It was because people like me were on his back. And he eventually had to admit it. And the funny thing was I was the first to report on it because Charlie had a suspension on his YouTube channel, moved to BitChute, and of course my brilliant supporters, one of them had put on my channel instantly after it came out on BitChute his interview with Kelly Rivers where he came clean, and I was on it within 2 hours. I'd made the video, put it out. and it went viral. Well, viral for me, like 34,000. I was used to getting less than 1,000 views, so it went viral in terms of what my channel was, and that's how everyone found out that Charlie Ward had been lying about certain things, and that's where it all started. This seed of doubt. What else was he lying about? And it went from there.
Exactly. And from what I understand, I guess Charlie came in at the right time to the awakened or truth community. It was just all perfect, wasn't it? You know, when he came with, with the Q movement at its height.
Timing was
Yeah,
was
yeah,
very
yeah.
prominent there in his success, and the people that came across his table, including this fake king. Yeah.
What was one of his jobs that he was talking about when he talked about the private jets that he used to move money around for people?
Um. So Charlie was an expatriate. He moved to Spain, Marbella, Spain. Um, Kevin, what do you know about Marbella and Spain, or Costa del Sol?
Well, yeah, I mean it's where all the crooks hang out, isn't it? If you want to be left alone, off the radar a bit, it's got some good laws.
So it turns out it's where, I mean, you can't say it's for every Brit that lives there, but it is generally where a lot of criminals who exile to Spain will go, and the reason being is its proximity to Morocco, and drug smuggling areas, um, and Gibraltar, and basically a place where a lot of Brits go. Anyway, so he'd been involved in money moving, basically, which is dodgy in itself. I know from people who've spoken to me that that some of this money was dodgy money, whether or not he says it is, drug money. And so he had this dodgy thing about moving around money. He says that he was moving it around for the elites, for politicians, and possibly so politicians, high-ranking officials, and whatnot. So moving money across borders, not through Spain, through across borders, and that's how it was done. Especially, maybe these days it's not such a big thing, but moving hard cash around the world, possibly in the 2000s and 90s, was a big deal. It turns out that he was saying he was flying private jets with these elite people. Again, red flags. These people are the sort of people that we would worrying about with human trafficking and drug trafficking, and these things that these woke people worry about. Whereas a lot of them say, well, he did bad things in the past and he's sorry about it, so let him off the hook. Well, that's doesn't really cut it for me. Let's look into it, is what I would say. But so anyway, he moved money around for the elite, which for me sounds kind of a bit Illuminati Freemasonry to me. But yeah, so he had connections, and he was connected to he was in a cult, Plymouth Brethren, a religious cult beforehand. And for me, the way I look at the information I've gathered, the research I've done, he was in this connected place, kind of connected to Freemasonry too, and he seemed to be then connected, and then he was claiming to be suddenly from going from a salesman, a security salesman, to being in charge of all the prisons in the UK, to then having to exile to Spain. And I'm told however, this could just be a rumor, let's say, to cover my back, that was to do with insurance fraud and a lot of money. And so he had to get out of the UK. I went to Spain, became a timeshare salesman, which are always trustworthy, of course, and then moved on to moving money, and so moving money around for the elites. And I would say probably more probable and confirmed, or not confirmed, however you want to look at it, to me, being with some dodgy stuff too. So yeah, that was his book.
Let me ask you this then. So, how much of a percentage of what Charlie's put out there and all this fear mongering that he's put out there has come true?
I would say at the very most, and this would be extremely generous, 10%, and that would be down to things that he's told people that have come from either other influencers or through actual kind of things that you could find yourselves from the government, you know. So he would report on things as if they are this secret intel, and actually um, it's already been there's already an article out there about it, and he's just picked up on it. But yeah, really, 10% would be generous. I would say it was probably less, but yeah, I'm trying to be generous here.
You know, he talks about that he's got a direct connection to Trump, which is, again, out of shared reality. It's just absolutely crazy for anyone to even think that could be a possibility. I don't know why people would even believe that, right? And, you know, he's even, you know, they're so invested in Trump still, aren't they? Trump coming back into politics, which, you know, I can't see it being a reality, but you never know, right? But this whole connection to Trump, and, you know, Trump sending him cufflinks, and you know, with zero zero evidence, which I think you found those cufflinks were available on eBay, like a lot of his products.
I found them, and available from the White House before he was out of office. And yeah, his connection to Trump, he's people that are close to him that do videos with him have said actually he's been accepted as commander in chief. But he's then denied that. But of course he has, because everyone's making fun of him for it. But he's not. I wish he said it himself, because. But then again, you know, I said 10%. Probably was too generous. Maybe it's less than 5%. But if you think about that, that means that every word out of his mouth, 9 out of 10 of them are disgenuine.
Well, just look how much fear mongering comes from that group. I remember I'm here in America watching live TV as the Capitol riots are taking place, and Americans were scared, man. You know, it was such a crazy time, and to think what this group was promoting at the time, and when zero of it came true, and you know, they talk about their intel sources, which no one ever knows who they are, but you know, you speak to anyone, you know, in higher authority, they will say that, you know, intel sources don't speak, and anyone that's in the intel departments, you know, they've signed secrecy acts. They are not allowed to break them, and we know the ramifications when they do break them. So,
well, one of the worst things that he'd said was one of the worst lies that he'd said was that he'd received the videotape of the inauguration 12 hours before it happened.
God, yes. Oh my God.
And yeah, and it turns out so. For a start, everyone was like, well, okay, why haven't you shared that with us then? You've received this bombshell evidence that you've been like, yeah, I've received it, I've viewed it, and I can confirm that I saw it well before it happened. Okay, well, show us before it happened then. Why didn't you not jump on and go, oh my God, this is groundbreaking, upload, look at this is about to happen. Like, even if it was like half an hour before it happened, to prove it was beforehand. None of that. After the inauguration, he said, oh, I received it beforehand. I did. It's all a lie. And we're thinking, well, you know, why didn't you do anything before that? Why don't you show us an email with a timestamp on it? Why don't you do anything?
And the whole thing about Biden being a clone as well.
Yeah, the whole thing with Biden. But after this inauguration video, like literally about 24 hours later, after he had literally been, you know, so many questions asked, well, why didn't you do this? Well, what's going on here? Maybe it was the next day. He then did another interview. Actually, I think it was a couple of days later. I did another interview and said, we've since found out that I was duped. Yeah, I was sent the video of Vice President Biden's inauguration during the Obama administration. So, I mean, being the voice that he is, you would think you would look into that for a start. But not only that, it seems like he lied. He knew he was lying and then had to make an excuse, to me. But yeah, the whole Biden is a clone thing as well. You know, many people have said that. Many people will probably criticize us for knocking that. I've seen some of the pictures. It looks kind of a bit odd To be honest, it looks just like he's had plastic surgery.
Obviously, Charlie's got a lot of people around him. Well, he had a lot more supportive staff, I think, if I call it that, around him, and some have sort of dropped off over time through disagreements and all sorts of other problems, right? Even with it, some of the content you've been putting out, I'm sure people close to him, you've been interviewing, and they've been watching your stuff, and it's changed their viewpoint.
That's true. The 30 Reasons actually asked a lot of questions of him, and some of the people who were doing consistent interviews with him decided not to anymore, or decided to ask questions, and then they got sort of booted out of this circle just for asking questions. I mean, Kirsten W, who I've done an interview with, was one of the Charlie's Angels. This group of ladies that were consistently doing interviews with him, and she had seen 30 Reasons and decided to ask questions. She sent a email to one guy, one YouTuber, and he had then she'd also sent it to RDS, Robert David Steele, who was a big promoter of Charlie Ward, and she got a massive backlash. She got a massive backlash from her fans as well. So I have to give her some props. Regardless of what content she'd put out and what ever she had said was going to happen, I was just interested with that interview, with what she had to say, really, regarding the subject. So yeah, lots of people, lots of prominent people had seen. I think even Lynn Wood had seen the 30 Reasons, and he had promoted Charlie, Lynn Wood. And he got a lot of backlash after 30 Reasons, saying, well, look at this. There's some questionable stuff. And literally due to my video, he then had to put out another statement saying, I have heard that Charlie Ward is controversial. Now, Charlie was desperate for this interview with Lynn Wood, which he was close to getting. And so, I would say that potentially, because of that video, that he was sidelined, blocked, not blocked, but that didn't happen because of the questions that I'd raised. Now, this is just because of his own words that I had put out there and then questioned. I'd not and even with Lynn Wood, you wouldn't expect, if someone had made a horrible video about him, saying bad things, he would not be the sort of person to go, oh well, this is a hate video, I'm gonna take attention to this because of disagreeing with what he says. Obviously he'd reviewed it or had listened to people that he trusted in, and gone, you know what, I won't deal with that. It sounds like there's some controversy, is what he said in his official statement about Charlie. And so I think that enraged Charlie, because he was waiting for that interview for a long time.
Yes, and this was probably at the point where Charlie was putting the threats out to you that, him and some other people were going to be coming around to your house. They knew who you were. They were putting information out that, God, what do they say about you? Was it MI5 related?
So he said that I was MI5 or MI6, that he'd found out. So first of all, the first thing he said was he knew who I was, and I'm going to be shitting myself once I realise they know who I am. He hasn't a clue. If he did, something would have come out. Then he said he's going to send his lawyers round because of it. And I'm going to be in for a big shock because I'm going to be sued and all sorts. That never happened, and I knew it wasn't going to happen. And once he realised I was going to carry on and not be scared of his indirect threats, he then had to put out a different story, of course, because he couldn't carry on with me carrying on. So then he said, oh, we've since found out he's working for MI5. And so there's no point in me taking this to the courts because they're all in the same bed. So he's going to get away with it. So there's no point in me doing that. Of course, Charlie. And then, yeah, so he moved on to saying, we know who he is. We've got all the paper trail to prove that he was paid by, British intelligence. So I made a video immediately afterwards. I think it was on GriftBusters. I showed his threats. I showed his claims. That I've got all the. He said I've got all the paperwork. We know that all four of them. He said actually, including the other GriftBusters, that they're all involved with British intelligence, this, that, and the other. Yeah. And so I just said, go on, show this paper trail. Go on. And I said, because it's not there, because it's fabricated. And what happened? Nothing happened. He stopped talking about me because because he hoped people would listen to him saying that and be like, oh yeah, well, Seeker is obviously, intelligence agency. Let's and not everyone did. People were like, yeah, all right then. Go on then, Charlie, show us the proof. Nothing happened. His good friend Claire Hocking Oakle was the person that he was referring to. Now, she claims that she'd found out who I was through quantum technology. Now, this apparently, can find out who people are and where they are and what's going on. And she'd found out that my name was Paul. It's not. And that I worked for MI5. And that this whole thing about, and I just asked for proof, and again, nothing. They just hoped people would listen to them, and then they could move on, and no one would question it. Of course, I carried on, and he kind of realised that after saying he sent the lawyers round, and said, "There's no point in sending the lawyers round. He's in my 5." Then he said he's going to send the boys round, and he said hopefully someone will dox him, someone will reveal who he is. And we can come round and maybe, because we found out where he lives, which he hadn't, we will go to his address and we will threaten him with my friends, which is, I've recorded all of, and I've got all the evidence for, even if he did find out who I was and come to my address, if he didn't get a baseball bat round his own face, or, which I'm not saying that I would, but, if he didn't get some sort of comeuppance, obviously, certainly I would involve the police to people harassing me. But what he did do was then give his real motive, which was, well, maybe someone will go around there. Maybe someone will go around there. Maybe someone will put the fear of God into them. He was literally reaching out to his fans to find me and hurt me. These were indirect threats, which I've got all recorded, which I've shown in my shows. When that didn't come to fruition, simply he moved on and did not speak of me again. But he mentioned me in, I think it was eight of his broadcasts. And he mentioned how he was going to send someone round, or someone will go round his house, and someone will reveal who he is, and someone will go and hurt him. And these are all indirect threats, and these are all something that I could bring to the police, and maybe I have. Who knows?
So I think we've done as much as we can right now on Charlie Ward. I would say to anyone, please check out M's videos on Charlie Ward. He goes into so much detail, him and his team do. They're really, really good. So they're all in the description below. We're going to switch lanes now and go to part 2, where we're going to be touching upon Glenn Ward, Charlie Ward's son, but mainly focusing on Simon Parkes. And I'm telling you, it's going to get really interesting. So I just want to say thank you for watching part 1.